Since the Second World War, powerful movements have been predicting that overpopulation, climate change, and various environmental disasters would soon make the planet unlivable. None of these predictions has come true, but that has seemingly only led these fanatical movements to redouble their efforts. The earliest wave of gloom and doom was generated by those who were warned about something they called overpopulation. Leading the way was Paul Ehrlich, who in the mid-60s began making increasingly wild claims about the coming Armageddon. The population was outpacing the food supply, Ehrlich claimed, and there was simply no way to feed everyone. Hundreds of millions of people were going to starve to death in the next decade. The media ran with it, and the public was afraid. The public turned to the politicians and demanded action, and the politicians were only too happy to comply. Over the past half-century, governments have spent billions of dollars in an effort to reduce the number of babies born. Even now, hundreds of thousands of people continue to be employed in the worldwide movement to combat something called overpopulation. They can't define overpopulation. Even today, there is still no workable demographic definition of what constitutes too many people. But they are just as certain today as they were in 1967 that it must be stopped. In the early 70s, global cooling began. The theory was that man was putting so much fine dust in the air by using fossil fuels that they would screen out the sunlight, or at least enough so the average temperature would drop 5 or 6 degrees and trigger a new ice age. But when the scientists noticed that the Earth's temperature was not falling, but rising ever so slightly, they pivoted and switched to global warming. When global temperatures stopped rising some 20 years ago, they reinvented themselves again as opponents of climate change. Every heat wave or cold front, blizzard or hurricane, flood or drought is now taken as further proof that human beings have somehow wrecked the weather. The population controllers and their environmentalist allies always blame on humans and fossil fuels. But reducing the world's supply of fossil fuels without having a replacement will push millions into starvation, sickness, and death. The only people in the West who will feel good about all this are those who have been duped into thinking there are too many people.